Hello, it's Sarah from Hardcover Hearts, and I'm here with my week of reading wrap-up. This is where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next week based on my mood. So I had a fantastic week of reading. I was off this entire week and have just been kind of going deep into some backlisted books that I've always wanted to read. I have some amazing buddy reads. I have some books that terrified me that I'm actually starting to read and am thrilled with that experience. I have some arcs that I completed for NetGalley to kind of get that off, check that off my list. And not related to books in any way, but I want to mention it as well. My sister, who owns a hair salon in Atlanta, FaceTimed with me and taught me how to cut my own hair. So I'm just thrilled to have that done, and now I will always know how to cut my own bangs. So thank you to my sister for helping me do that. FaceTime is a remarkable use of technology. So let's get into the books because there are a lot, and I want to tell you all about them. The first book that I finished was Weather by Jenny Offill. Now, I finished this last week and I mentioned finishing it, but I couldn't really tell you anything about it because I had my In Real Life book club that night and I really wanted to share with them first. So let me start there and kind of bring you up to speed with that. I was really excited for this book in that I enjoyed Department of Speculation, which was really about motherhood and creativity and about how do you grow up and maintain your creativity and what does art look like and motherhood and kind of dealing with all of that and marriage. And I thought it was really well done. It was kind of in this fragmented vignette, little snippet style. Felt almost like journal entries, so to speak. And so I was excited to read this because I enjoyed Department of Speculation. However, when I found out it was going to be in the same snippet style, I got nervous because it felt like maybe this is now going to be her default style, and I don't know that every story should be told that way. So I was a little trepidatious going in. I was right to be trepidatious because the vignette style, this kind of snippet style in this story, which is about a woman. She's a very, very privileged woman. They live in New York. I think she lives in Brooklyn. And her name's Lizzie Benson. And she just kind of finds her way into this job as a librarian. And she thinks of herself as a fake psychologist or psychiatrist. And she's always judging people and looking at them and observing them. And she's has this really codependent relationship with her brother, who is an ex-drug addict, who gets involved in this relationship. She has a small son and is married. And she is also helping out this very famous lecturer named Sylvia, who's doing a lot of lectures about the environment. I wonder how I would have felt about this book if I hadn't read Ducks Newburyport and loved it so much. So I think there's so many similarities between the two of them, but this is a much shorter, faster book. And that book really takes you through the paces of all of the ways that the environment is at risk and all the different ways that it's impacting this one woman's life and her psyche and all of that. And we just couldn't cover all those bases with this one story in the short time it was. Ultimately, I didn't like the book. I think there were some vignettes that really worked very well. It was hard for me to figure it out, but I think ultimately it came down to the fact that the style got in the way and this character just was insufferable to me. She did a lot of good things, but she was completely not engaged in it. She didn't do it for the right reasons. She just did it out of duty or habit, or I don't know. And so I just never really got any depth here for me. And my brilliant friends in my book club also said that this character really got in the way of what could have been an interesting story. So I ended up giving it a 2.5. on, I know you can't give 0.5s on Goodreads, but that was in my head. That was what it was. It was a little less than a meh book. It didn't work for me. But let me tell you a book that did work for me. This was the next one. This one will be coming out next month in the United States. And this is Moonflower Murders by Anthony Horowitz. So this is the second of his Susan Ryland mystery books series. The first one was the Magpie Murders, and which I thought was so brilliant and so good. It kind of like taking the publishing world and this kind of Russian nesting doll where you have all these things about, it's very meta about the publishing world and mystery. The same thing is happening in this book, where Susan Ryland was one of the editors for a crime series, the Atticus Pund crime series. And she was the one who was kind of in the middle of in the Magpie Murders. Well, she's just said, this is it. I'm done with this kind of work. I almost lost my life to this. This is crazy. So she and her boyfriend moved to Crete, and they open up of this little hotel. Well, this story opens with a couple coming and reaching out to her because they also own a hotel in England. There was a murder that happened many years ago, and that murder ironically became one of the books that she edited. So the main the main background was used as kind of the foundation upon which the author created his story. And their daughter, who works one of the people that works at this hotel, read it, and she thinks she solved the murder. And she mentioned that, and then she has disappeared. So they want Susan to come back and help find their daughter and solve this puzzle because she edited the book. And so they think that she'll be able to see something once she's in the setting and meets all the people. So she agrees because they need some money, and they're offering to give her a good amount of money to do this. And it ends up being just a fantastic book, really fun, smart, very, very smart, tons of characters. And I think the thing that Anthony Horowitz does really well is he can really differentiate characters. And he's really great at creating these little twists that you think is going to go one way and then go another, with all these possibilities of how you can solve the crime. Thought it was great. I do really, really like this series, and I really look forward to it coming out because I want my mother to read it specifically. So that was great, and that was one of my arcs that I got to check off my list, my advanced reader copies off of NetGalley. Then I finished The Romance of the Forest by Anne Radcliffe. This is concludes my 18th century women novelists kind of project that I was doing with a group. Had the lovely opportunity to read this alongside of a bunch of different people. And we had a core group that kind of traversed with us through the entire thing, which was absolutely a delight. So this was written in 1791 and is an early example of Gothic mystery. So there's a lot of nature and a lot of setting in this book. We've got Adeline, who is just such a wonderful character, and she is just kind of thrown into all of these adventures and in creepy situations, doesn't know who to trust. Bad things happen, but in beautiful settings. And it's just a joy to read. It reads so modern and so quick, and it's very accessible. I enjoyed it tremendously and was just so happy to have read all 4 books with so many brilliant, smart, lovely people, and very sad to be done with it. Wow. But very happy to have gone on that adventure with everyone. So this was great. I gave it a 4-star just because it was so much fun to read and so light and airy, and I loved the kind of creepy Gothic nature to it. Thought it was really good. Then I had an audio book. I really realized that I dropped one of the book series that everyone talks about as being really, really good. And as you know, I really like murder mysteries that are set in foreign locations. And so this is the Donna Leon series. And number 2 is called Death in a Strange Country. And this is the Commissario Brunetti. In this, we have an American man who shows up dead, and his pocket's been picked, and so they assume it was just a robbery. And Brunetti needs to solve the crime. And there's an American base there. And so he starts to work with the Americans to help figure out the crime. And there's politics, and there's an environmental edge to this. And there's all sorts of layers of what's happening and how different countries exploit and use other countries, and how people get caught in the middle of it. I was really impressed. I had no idea it was going to go in the directions it was, and going to have such real world implications and such ecological. There was as I mentioned, an ecological element here. I really liked it, and looking forward to number 3. And I think she's written so many. I think she's in the high 20s, maybe even the 30s of this series. So there's a long way for me to go here. And what's really, really good about this series is there's a lot about Brunetti and what it's like to be a commissario in Venice, a lot about his life and his family and his marriage. And so you really get a sense of the culture and a sense of what it's like in Italy, in Venice. And I love those kinds of things. It's not just a straight police procedural. There's a lot more of the backstory of Brunetti as our main character. And so I love that. Then I read part of my Anita Brookner project. I'm doing this with Leo of A Little Book Life. And Leo sent me this for my birthday. This is Family and Friends by Anita Brookner. This is a special edition. It's signed by Anita Brookner. And there were this is number 69 of 250. So I feel very, very honored to have this book as we go through our project, which is going to take us about 2 years. So this is number 5. This is, as I mentioned, Family and Friends. She really takes a departure in this one. So previously, we've really focused on a singular character going through, everything is kind of forward facing. And so we might have flashbacks, we might have a little reflection, but everything else is kind of forward moving. And she always was known as the Brookner woman, is a woman who is starting into her middle to late years, and who is really has had problems with love, challenges with her parents, and trying to be independent, and those are kind of her main and deals a lot with loneliness. That's kind of the Brookner woman. And the last was Hotel du Lac, which she won the Man Booker Award for. Now, this is a complete departure because this is a family saga. And so immediately, Leo and I were a little thrown off. It opens with a photograph. And so you're looking at this photograph, and kind of the people are being described, and you don't really, it's hard to understand where it's going and who you're meant to focus on. And ultimately, there's a family of 4 brothers and sisters, and the father has passed away. And the mother plays a very, very strong role in this family. She has ideas of what each child is going to do and bring, and really her favorites are Frederick and Betty. And Frederick and Betty are the most vivacious. They're the most outgoing. They're beautiful. And so she spoils them, and they end up worse for it. The other 2, Mimi and Alfred, are the ones that are kind of overlooked in favor of Alfred and Betty, and they have more interesting lives. And so we end up going, it's not necessarily multi-generational, but we focus on this generation and the intricacies of what happens with their lives, how it was supposed to go versus how it goes, and the impact that this has on the tensions or the bonds of this family. It was magnificent, as Anita Brookner always is. We are thrilled with this, and I think Leo and I are going to do a video. We're still talking about how to get it done, but we want to talk about the first 5 books and the differences between them without any spoilers, so that if you've been interested in reading Anita Brookner, if you're curious at all, you can hear a little bit about each book and kind of the merits of them, and how Anita Brookner is progressing, or how we are experiencing her progression as she goes through these books. So stay tuned for that. Then I read another advanced reader copy. This is for a book that's already out. This book is called Exciting Times by Naoise Dolan. This book had me from the get-go. So I know she's being compared very much to Sally Rooney as kind of this millennial woman writer providing this kind of fresh new voice. I'm here for it. She witty, wry sensibility from the get-go. The main character is Ava. She's a Dubliner who is in Hong Kong, and we know that she's starting to date this guy. He's a banker, very different class setup, and but they have like this banter back and forth, this wry, kind of self-deprecating, kind of biting at times, a repartee. And they keep seeing each other and seeing each other. And eventually a relationship of sorts starts to develop. But it's very tenuous and it's very strange, and it's set up in an interesting way. And Ava, is actually English as a foreign language teacher to children. And so she has this job that's not paying very much. She doesn't really like kids. It's a little bit stressful. And she's very smart and very astute. She notices things about people. She takes things in. One of the things I liked most about this book was she would talk about grammar and about language, and how English really, the way you say something could differ between Irish English, posh Eton English that Julian has, or another character that comes into this it is named Edith, and this woman is Chinese who was born in Hong Kong. And so they all speak different English in different ways, and to interesting results. And I just loved those observations. And also, as she's teaching English and she thinks about its usage but it's done in such an interesting way as it's interwoven. I thought this book was fantastic. It was so sharp and insightful and new. And there's a romance, but it's an adult, thoughtful romance filled with all sorts of challenges, real life challenges, dealing with class, dealing with power, dealing with morality and honesty and transparency. I thought it was really, really good. If you like Sally Rooney type style, you might really want to check this one out. And then after seeing Russell from Ink and Paper blog talk about this one in one of his videos, I knew I had to get it. I immediately put a hold on the audio and the book from my library, and it just came up this week. And the book is The Prettiest Star by Carter Sickles. Not a story I knew was going to get me in the feels. It is set in Ohio, and we have a family that is just a Ohio family. There's a mother and a father, and they have a son and a daughter. The son is gay and has left Ohio and gone to the big city. We are very clearly in the 80s. And we start with the mother, and she's kind of talking about this town and how they ended up in this town, and how she, raising the kids and the memories of the children, and her life now, and kind of figuring out as a middle-aged woman, what is she fulfilled? Is she not fulfilled? We get the daughter who she had a relationship with her brother, and then he just left, and no one really talks about him anymore. No one really says anything because they're ashamed that he's gay. It's not something that is embraced by the family, and and she's really missed him and therefore doesn't really know how to deal with him or how to think about him. And she's going through all your normal teenage, preteen drama. Well, Brian, the brother, needs to return home because he has caught HIV, and he is in the throes of AIDS. His lover has died. Many of his friends have died, and he asks to come home, ostensibly to die. And it's the introduction of him into his home and the reactions that the family members have. The grandmother always tells Brian that he reminds her of her older brother who died in the war, that he was always artistic. And so I think the grandmother sees him for who he is and loves him anyway. Coming back to Ohio into the small town, all sorts of ramifications happen. This is a powerful novel, and I think it's very, very important because it holds you in the 1980s. It does not let you out. But you get to see exactly where and how difficult things were. And I think it's especially important now during a pandemic. When we think about that pandemic and what it felt like, it's very easy for us to forget that now because of all the advancements with antiretroviral drugs and how people can live with the disease now in a way that was never possible in the moment that this book is written. Incredibly powerful. I bawled my eyes out. It is a great, great book. Thank you, Russell, for the recommendation. So now let me tell you what I am reading currently, because that was a lot of books. Right now I am reading, the first time I'm reading Virginia Woolf. I know, I have put her off for so long because I was so scared, but I'm reading this stunning edition, Folio Society edition that I have of Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own. I'm doing this with Elizabeth the Bookish North, and we are both reading it for the first time, and our minds are blown, absolutely blown. I'm taking it so slowly because every single time I end up writing a ton in my journal and just thinking, and I get it. I get why this is the masterpiece that it is, and it's so accessible. I was so afraid of it. I was so afraid that it was going to be very, very overwhelming and intellectually dense and hard to get to, very poetic, very filled with illusions, and instead it's so accessible, so real. You feel that you're there with her as she takes on this concept of what women need to write fiction. Guess what? They need a room of their own and $500 a year. So says Virginia Woolf. So I'll talk more because I'm sure I'm going to finish it this weekend. I'll talk more about that next week. Then I'm doing a different buddy read. This is with Juan of Just One Reader, and we are reading Brideshead Revisited. Because if I can't be in Oxford right now, I can at least travel there in books. And I am here to tell you, I gasped out loud when our main character went to see Sebastian and in his dorm room, and the dorm was Meadows of upper floor Christchurch, which is my dorm room when I go to Oxford. So I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it so far. We're going to take about 3 weeks to read this, but it's delicious. Absolutely enjoying it. Then my next buddy read that I'm doing is This Rough Magic, and this is with Kate Howe. This is Mary Stewart's book set in Corfu. Now, I know about Corfu because of the Durrells. Lawrence Durrell wrote a bunch of books about his family and their life in Corfu, and I've seen a little bit of the TV show and find it absolutely charming and delightful. But this is a completely different style. This is kind of that gothic romantic mystery, perfect for the summer, perfect if you want a beach read, but this is just an advanced beach read, I would say. You've got like stunning nature writing. All sorts of strange things are happening. and you're not sure if it's because the woman just is new and doesn't know these people, doesn't know what's happening, it doesn't have the context, or are these really creepy things happening? I'm enjoying it so much. Reading with Kate is always a joy. So really looking forward to reading more of that. And this is actually encouraging us to watch The Tempest because there's all sorts of Shakespearean information intertwined in it because of that play. So we're both going to have like an additional project of watching the play and then talking about how it interweaves into the book. So delighted by that. Then I have an audiobook that I've been looking forward to that came in the library hold called Conjuring Women. And this is by Afia Atakora. So far, I'm enjoying it. So it's really looking at this one now village, but was a plantation. And there's a timeline that kind of cuts in between. So there's some scenes that are happened during slavery and some right after freedom. And having just celebrated Juneteenth, where more people are starting to understand about Juneteenth, you start to see a little bit more about what happened with the slaves as they're starting to recognize that they're free, but what does free mean? How do they navigate that? And we're following this woman and her mother that are, in essence, the hoodoo women, the voodoo women, the conjuring women, the witches of this that were in the slave quarters, but had an elevated status because they were doing the medicine for everyone. They were taking care of people. And so not only do we have the advent of freedom, but we also have a gentleman who comes and travels in, and he is a traveling preacher. And so we have the two religions kind of battling each other of who's going to care for these people. When something's wrong, do they go to her for her medicine, or do they go to this new preacher for his spiritual medicine? I'm enjoying it so far. We'll see how it ends. I'm about halfway through. And because it is Jane Austen July, I have started Northanger Abbey. And this is the annotated version of it. I'm really excited to read this. I really love annotated editions. The books that I read for the 18th century women novelists had amazing annotations. These are the Oxford University, Oxford World Classics. And this is done by Anchor Books. And I have a few of these, but I'm really excited to kind of keep with the theme, that kind of Gothic theme. So I'm going to read this for Jane Austen July. So many books. And then let me give you a quick peek at some books that I'm interested in reading and I might pick up next week. Corregidora by Gail Jones has been sitting here speaking to me. So I think I might pick this up, and it's so short. I might save it for Reading Rush if I can find a prompt to fit this in, or I might just sneak it in anyway. We shall see. Then my In Real Life book club and I have decided we're going to read The Vanishing Half by Bennett. Super excited by this. And then this was, along with the Brit Bennett book, this is also my choice from last month from the Book of the Month Club. And this is A Burning by Megha Majumdar. So many books. You never know. I might read those. I might read something else. But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll look forward to seeing you another time. Please stay safe. Practice social distancing. Don't touch your face. And wash your hands frequently. Thank you. See you later.